So in the previous class we saw torque experienced by a current loop in a uniform magnetic field. So we didn't complete it completely. So we'll just go through it again one more time. So we saw we had two magnets placed. So there were two magnets like this. One was north, one was south. This was north pole, this was south pole, and there was a magnetic field which is generated over here like this, correct? A magnetic field is generated between this magnetic pole, okay? And then what we did was we placed a current carrying loop in this magnetic field. So it was placed something like this. It was placed like this. So there was a current carrying loop. Obviously we considered as a complete loop, but here actually there is a lot of things. Okay, so here you have those slip rings. This is a commutator. It is called as a commutator. You will understand this when we do alternating current. Okay, so then it is connected to a power supply like this through a key. Okay, so what is the work of this commutator and all, we'll study later. Okay, but for now let us consider just the loop, because we are interested in finding the torque, right, acting on this particular loop. So let's complete this loop. Okay, so we consider that is current flowing in this loop. So current was flowing like this. There is magnetic field here from north to south. So what happens when this loop, okay, current carrying loop is placed in a magnetic field? We saw that there is torque acting. Okay, as simple like, for example, we have a body and you apply a force on this body. What happens is that body has a linear motion, correct? No? So basically, supposing I have a body and a torque is applied on this body, then what will happen? This body is going to have a rotational motion. This body will start rotating. Okay, so this is what is going to happen. A torque will be applied. Who is applying the torque? The magnetic field is applying the torque. So this magnetic field is going to apply the torque on this coil, and the coil is going to start moving. The coil is going to start rotating in this magnetic field. Okay, so we saw that if we called it as A, B, C, D, we saw that the forces acting on the arms AB and AD are 0. Correct? Because force acting on a conductor, if we consider this sides of this particular coil, that is AB, BC, CD and DA as individual conductors placed in a uniform magnetic field, then we know that a force acts on the conductor which is placed in magnetic field, which is given by ILB sine of theta. So for these two sides, that is BC and AD, okay, the forces are going to be 0, because magnetic field is going in this direction, the current is also going in this direction. So L and B are in the same direction, so theta is going to be 0. For side AD, B is going in this direction, I is going opposite direction, so theta is going to be 180 degrees. So that is how the force for these two arms is going to be 0. As far as these two arms are concerned, that is AB and CD, we saw that using Fleming's left hand rule, the force on AB is going to be downwards and force on CD is going to be upwards. And we know on any sort of body, when two equal and opposite forces, which are non-collinear forces, the forces should not lie in one line. Okay, if such forces act on a body, what happens is that body will start rotating. We mean that this body is a couple, it becomes a couple. Two equal and opposite forces acting at two different places. Non-collinear forces. Okay, so when these non-collinear forces are going to act on this body, what is going to happen over here is this body will start rotating. Okay, as the body starts rotating, we say that the torque is acting on the body. Okay, and the expression for torque we already saw. The expression for torque was given as NIAB sine of theta. The expression for torque was given as NIAB sine of theta, where N was the number of turns for the coil, I is the current in the loop or the coil, A is the area of the coil, B is the uniform magnetic field in which it is placed, and theta is the angle between the area vector, that is the normal to the plane of the coil, and the magnetic field. Correct? This is what we saw. We also saw that when this plane of the coil is at an angle of theta, okay, or the normal to this plane is making an angle of theta, what happens? That is when we got this expression, that is NIAB sine of theta. Okay, so we'll see what happens when the perpendicular to the plane of the coil makes an angle of theta with the magnetic field. Okay, so let's consider the coil is placed something like this. Okay, let's say the coil is something like this. So let's name the coil. Let's name it as PQRS. Okay, let's say this is the axis of the coil, like this. Okay, so let's say this is the normal to the plane, and this is the magnetic field. So angle between the normal to the plane and the magnetic field I am considering as theta. Okay, so theta is the angle between the normal to the magnetic field, normal to the plane of the coil, and the magnetic field. So if such is the position, it is at an angle of theta, that is theta is the angle between the normal to the plane and the magnetic field, how is the torque going to act? That we are going to see. Okay, so now you apply the Fleming's left hand rule to side QR and to side PS. You will notice that the forces acting on this side QR and PS, if the current direction is like this, the forces acting will be along the axis opposite to each other. So you will see that there are equal and opposite forces on side QR and PS. They are collinear forces. That means these forces are acting along one line. Okay, so what is going to happen is this force is going to cancel out the effect of this force, and hence the force acting on this side, these two sides, is going to be equal to 0. Okay, so these two forces acting over here is going to be equal to 0. Now coming to the other two sides, that is PQ and RS. So if you apply the Fleming's left hand rule, you will see that the force acting on this side is going to be downward force. So I'll draw it like this. Okay, just understand this is downwards. It means this side PQ will be pulled down. Okay, and the force acting on this side is going to be upwards like this. That means this side RS will be pulled on top. Okay, so my I is the current flowing through the coil PQRS. Okay, let us say the sides of the PQRS, this measurement I'll take as A. Okay, and this measurement I'll take as B. Okay, this one I'll take as B. Okay, this is A, this is B. So area over here is going to be A multiplied by B, area of the coil, that is length multiplied by breadth. Okay, theta is okay now. Theta is the angle between the direction of magnetic field and the normal to the plane of the coil, that is area vector also you can consider. The angle between area vector and the magnetic field vector. Okay, so now if I want to find out the torque, okay, so now if you see the front view, okay, if you see the front view, this is your magnet, north pole, this is your south pole, okay, and the front view will be something like this. The plane will look something like this. Correct? Okay, so basically this is going to be your plane like this from the front view. That means this is going to be, or rather since it is pulled down this side and pulled up this side, okay, that's fine. So this is going to be your M, or this is going to be your area vector. For now let's take it as area vector, or the normal. Okay, this is going to be your magnetic field. So this angle between over here is theta. Okay, so if I join this, okay, by geometry this one is going to become theta. Okay, and this side we have taken as A. So basically this is your PS. Okay, so this side we have taken PS, we have taken as A. So now torque is given by force into perpendicular distance. So how much is the force acting on this side and this side? The force is going to be F is equal to ILB sine of theta. Correct? It is going to be ILB sine of theta. This is going to be your force. But here theta will be what? The angle between L and B is going to be 90 degrees. Correct? So sine theta will become 1. So this will come to IL into B. And if you see what is the length of this wire PQ and RS, the length of the wire is taken as small b. So this one will become IB into B. Okay. How this becomes 90? Again, you can use your right hand thumb rule. Okay. L cross B. L, you take your first finger, that is the forefinger for L, and B for the middle finger. Or you can use the Fleming's left hand rule again. Your I will be represented by the middle finger and the magnetic field by the forefinger. Thumb is going to give you the direction of force. Okay. So you will see that force is going to be perpendicular to the plane containing L and B. So obviously the angle between the L and B is going to be 90 degrees over here at that point. Okay. So that is going to be sine theta is going to be 1. It is sine of 90 is going to be 1 there. Okay. So if you substitute this force over here, ILB, okay, is going to be your force. Perpendicular distance is going to be, see, one force is acting over here, that is downwards. One force is acting over here, that is upwards. So perpendicular distance between the two forces become this distance from here to here. Okay. So if I consider sine of this angle over here, that is theta, it is going to be opposite upon hypotenuse. So sine of theta is going to be the opposite side, that is this perpendicular side, upon hypotenuse is going to be A. So this perpendicular side is going to be A sine of theta. So this is going to be A sine of theta over here. Okay. So this one will become I into A into L will become B. This L is nothing but B into B sine of theta. So this one is A into B, and A into B is nothing but the area of the coil. So IAB sine of theta is going to be your torque acting on the coil. Okay. So if there are n number of turns for the coil, it will become NIAB sine of theta. This is going to be your final result for the torque. So in the next step, this NIA, okay, N into I into A, we have already seen is nothing but the magnetic dipole moment. Correct? We have already seen it as magnetic dipole moment. So if you substitute this N into I into A as magnetic dipole moment, what you will get? You will get it as MB sine of theta will be your torque. Okay? And since M is a vector, B is also a vector, and theta is angle between M and B. If you look at this figure, this is theta is the angle between magnetic field and the area vector. correct? And area vector is nothing but the magnetic field vector, the dipole moment vector also. The magnetic dipole moment vector also, because magnetic dipole moment is given by I into A. So whatever is the direction of area vector, the same will be the direction of magnetic dipole moment here. So since A is going in this direction, the magnetic dipole moment is also in the same direction. So theta can be considered the angle between the magnetic field and the magnetic dipole moment vector. Okay, so that is how I can write this as the cross product. That is mb sin theta can be written as m cross b will be your torque in the vector form. This can be written. Okay, so if you remember your torque for an electric dipole in the uniform magnetic field, uniform electric field, what was it? It was Pe sine of theta. Remember this? It was Pe sine of theta. That was nothing but torque was given by P cross E. Isn't it similar? The magnetic dipole moment is replaced by the electric dipole moment, and the magnetic field is replaced by the electric field. It's almost same. It's completely same. Only thing is the terms are changing. The format remains same. Okay, so this is how you get, that is torque is equal to m cross b. Okay, now direction of the torque will be how? As the loop rotates. Like for example, the direction of the torque is such that it rotates the loop clockwise about the axis of suspension. It depends upon how the forces are acting. Okay, depends upon how the forces are acting. If the force is this side, if on the left side it is upward, down, on the right side it is downward, then it will be clockwise. If left side it is downwards, and right side it is upwards, it is anti-clockwise. Okay, so it depends how the forces are acting there. So now coming to the special cases. I'll write down the main expression over here. Tau is equal to mb sine of theta. Okay, so coming to the special cases, when theta is equal to 0 degrees, when angle between the magnetic dipole moment and the magnetic field is 0 degrees, what is going to be the torque? Sine of 0 will be 0, so torque will be equal to 0. That means that the torque is going to be minimum when the plane of the coil is perpendicular to the magnetic field. So that means, supposing this is your north pole, this is your south pole, how should be your plane? Your plane should be like this. That means the magnetic field and the area vector, or the magnetic dipole moment vector, both should be in the same direction. That is when theta will be equal to 0, or your plane should be perpendicular to the magnetic field. So you can say either plane is perpendicular to magnetic field, or you can say that magnetic dipole moment is parallel to the magnetic field. That is when theta will be equal to 0. If theta is equal to 90 degrees, what is going to be the torque in this case? The torque is going to be maximum. That is NIAB, sine of 90, and sine of 90 will be 1. So in this case, the torque is going to be maximum when the plane of the loop, okay, that means the plane of the loop is parallel to the magnetic field. That means, supposing this is north and this is south, then your loop is something like this. That is your magnetic dipole moment is perpendicular to magnetic field, or your plane of the loop is parallel to the magnetic field. This is what you are going to get. So this is going to be tau max, that is the maximum dipole, maximum torque which is applied on the coil. Okay. Now the expression for the torque holds good for loop of any shape. You consider a loop of any shape, may it be a circular, may it be hexagonal, may it be rectangular, or a square loop. Any kind of loop, any shape of loop is valid. Okay, the same concept will be applied. This expression will hold true. That is tau is equal to NIAB sine of theta, or tau is equal to m cross b. This is going to hold true. Okay. Now supposing the angle between, the second point I am talking about, supposing you are given the angle between the plane and the magnetic field. Okay. For example, for now we were given the angle, supposing this was my coil. then we were given the angle between the normal, correct, the normal vector or the area vector and the magnetic field. Theta was the angle between the normal and the magnetic field. Now supposing we are given the angle between the plane and the magnetic field. So let's say alpha. Okay, let's say alpha, such that theta plus alpha will be equal to 90 degrees. Correct, no? So what will be theta in that case? Theta is going to be 90 minus alpha. So how will your expression change? Tau will become NIAB sine of 90 minus alpha. So you have to see when the problems are given, which angle is given to you. So what angle we are using in the formula? We are using the angle between the magnetic dipole moment or the area vector and the magnetic field. That is the angle we are using in the formula. So if the angle between the plane and the magnetic field is given to you, that time what you will have to do? You will have to remove that angle from 90 degrees and then use that new angle. So if I say if angle between the magnetic field vector and the plane of the coil is 30 degrees, then what will be your theta? Theta is going to be 90 minus 30, that is going to be 60 degrees. We have to consider the angle between the area vector and the magnetic field vector. Remember that. I hope everybody knows how to take the area vector. Everybody knows how to take the area vector, right? Okay, so basically it depends upon how you look at the loop. Okay, how you are looking at the loop, that depends upon that. Fine, so supposing you are looking or you are traversing the circuit in the clockwise direction. Okay, the area vector will be downwards. If you are traversing the circuit, or if the current is going in the anti-clockwise direction, that means you are looking from top, let's say. Okay, then the area vector will be taken perpendicular upwards. So it depends upon your eyesight, from where you see it. If you are looking it from down, take it down. If you are looking it from top, take it on top. Okay, or the sign convention which is basically followed for the magnetic dipole moment. Okay, it is taken this way. So basically, if you curl your fingers, okay, if you curl your fingers of the right hand along the loop with the fingers pointing in the direction of current. Okay, so if you curl your fingers, supposing this is my loop, the current is going like this, that is current is going clockwise. Okay, so if you curl your fingers in the direction of current, okay, then the thumb is going to go in the direction of magnetic dipole moment, and that can be taken as the area vector also. Okay, so in this case it will be downwards, right, inside the board, or inside the, it will be rather, I'll mark like this, it will be like this. So magnetic dipole moment will be going inside the screen. Okay, supposing the coil is taken in anti-clockwise direction like this. So take your right hand, curl your fingers in the direction of current, and you will get the direction of magnetic movement, dipole movement. So this is how the direction of dipole movement is taken. Okay. So moving on, in this case also, that is when magnetic dipole is placed in a uniform magnetic field, we have something called as stable equilibrium and unstable equilibrium. Likewise, we had for an electric dipole in a uniform electric field. Correct? No, we had something called a stable dipole and an unstable condition, or stable condition and an unstable condition. The same way we have it here also. So supposing I have torque that is equal to mb sine of theta. Okay, and when theta is equal to 0 degrees. Okay, when theta is equal to 0 degrees, this is called as the stable equilibrium. Torque will be 0 here. It is called as the stable equilibrium. Okay, and when theta is equal to 180 degrees, theta is equal to 180 degrees, this is called as the unstable equilibrium. That means the magnetic field is going on one side and the area vector is going on the other side. That is, magnetic dipole movement is going on one side and magnetic field is going on the other side. It is kept something like this, north and south. So area vector is over here, this side. Okay, and the magnetic field is going on the other side. This is called as the stable equilibrium. So torque will act and get it back to the stable equilibrium. Okay, so this is the reason why freely suspended magnetic dipole in a magnetic field aligns itself in the direction of magnetic field. Supposing there is a magnetic field somewhere and you hold a magnetic needle, it automatically points in the north-south direction. Correct? No? So why does it do that? Because it experiences this magnetic field, a torque acts on that needle, the compass needle, and that is why it rotates. So supposing a needle is placed in such a magnetic field, north and south, so what it will do? The magnetic field lines are going like this. Correct? No? So the needle will point something like this. That is, this is going to be north, this is going to be south. Okay, that means the field line will go from south to north inside the magnet. Okay, so it will align itself like this, automatically align itself like this. Okay, if you have a coil placed, current carrying coil, what is the direction of magnetic field? We know the magnetic field direction is given by the right hand thumb rule. Correct? No? So supposing I take a circular coil I place like this. Okay, and the current is flowing in this direction, let's say anti-clockwise direction. What is going to be the magnetic field for this anti-clockwise direction? The thumb is going to give you the magnetic field, but original magnetic field is going like this. Original magnetic field is going like this, and this is going to be the magnetic field due to coil, the current carrying coil. So what will happen is there will be a torque acting on this coil, and this coil is going to come in this position like this. This is north, this is south, and your coil will come in the stable equilibrium like this. That means the coil's magnetic field will align with the main magnetic field. Obviously that should happen, right? The current is flowing like this. Now see, now check. Now your magnetic field is going to be in the same direction as the coil's magnetic field. Why this happens? Because there is torque acting on this coil. The torque gets it from the unstable equilibrium into a stable equilibrium. Okay, that is why it happens. Okay, so if you hold a compass needle, the earth behaves like a magnet. We are going to see it in the next chapter. Our earth is nothing but a magnet. Okay, in the core of the earth we consider there is a magnet. There is a magnetic field all around here. So due to that magnetic field, the earth's magnetic field, our compass needle moves. Okay, so that is because the torque is acting on that compass needle, and the magnetic field, the earth's magnetic field, produces this torque, applies this torque. Okay, now coming to the potential energy. So in the electrostatics, what was the potential energy given by? In electrostatics, the potential energy was given by P dot E. If you remember, the potential energy in electrostatic for an electric dipole was given by P dot E, which was PE cos of theta, where theta is the angle between electric dipole moment and the electric field. Okay, so in magnetism, here in this case, okay, the potential energy of the coil, okay, potential energy of the coil is given by same M dot B, that is mb cos of theta. It is going to be equal to m into b cos of theta. Okay, and work done in rotating the coil through an angle of theta. Supposing the coil is rotated through an angle of theta, okay, the work done in this case is given by W is equal to m into b into 1 minus cos of theta. Remember this formula. This is for entrance. Okay, we are not bothered how this comes. We just remember for this entrance that W is equal to mb1 minus cos of theta. This is going to be the work done. Okay, in rotating the coil through an angle of theta. Okay, and the potential energy stored in the coil is going to be equal to m dot b. Okay, so this is going to be your potential energy of the coil. Okay, so next topic we have is magnetic dipole moment of a revolving electron and gyromagnetic ratio. Okay, so this topic we have a derivation actually, but the derivation is reduced. The derivation is not there for this year. Only the problems can be asked based on the formula. So basically we need to understand the derivation here to understand what are the formulae. Okay, so we'll just quickly do the derivation. You need not study this derivation for exam. Okay, the derivation will not be there for evaluation. Only a problem can be asked on this. Okay, so now if I have an electron, okay, if I have an electron, and this electron is revolving in its orbit. Okay, we have an atom basically, and this electron is orbiting in its orbit around a nucleus. Okay, so let's say this is a nucleus I have over here. Okay, let's say the charge on the nucleus is plus Ze, where Z is the atomic number of the nucleus. Okay, consider this is circle, fine. Okay, and this electron is going, let's say, in the anti-clockwise direction. The electron is going like this. It is taking revolving. So obviously the current is going to flow in the clockwise direction. The current is going to flow in the clockwise direction due to this. Okay, so I am considering an electron over here, a charged electron. Considering a charged electron over here having a charge of minus E. The mass on this electron, let's say, is m. Okay, and this electron is revolving in the anti-clockwise direction with a velocity, let's say, v. It's revolving with a velocity of v, and the time period of this electron, that means the time taken for one complete revolution, let's say, is capital T. Okay, it is this particular atom has a central heavily positive charged nucleus. Okay, and the orbit of this is, let's say, r. The orbit radius, I'll put orbit radius is r. Okay, so what is the current which is generated due to this electron? The current which will be generated due to this electron is going to be the charge divided by the time period. The charge flowing per unit time is nothing but the current, right? So charge divided by the time is going to be my current. So what is time period over here? Time period is nothing but a total distance covered, the radius I have. So total distance covered is the circumference of this orbit, that is 2 pi r, divided by the speed. Using the formula, speed is equal to distance upon time. So time will be equal to distance upon speed. So distance is 2 pi r, speed I have taken as v over here. So I get time period as 2 pi r upon v. Okay, so now substituting it over here, what I will get current as? Current will be E upon, in place of T I'll put this, so V will come on top. This will be 2 pi r upon V, which is going to come on top. Okay, so now the magnetic, if I consider the magnetic dipole moment over here, obviously I can consider a magnetic dipole moment here because this is going to behave like a loop. It is going to behave like a current carrying loop. No doubt we don't have a conductor over here. We do not have a conductor, we do not have a wire over here, but still, since the electron is rotating over here and the current is flowing like this in an orbit, we can consider it as a current carrying loop. So since there is a current carrying loop, there will be some magnetic dipole moment here, because current carrying loop behaves like a magnetic dipole. Since magnetic dipole is there will be a current, there will be a magnetic dipole moment here. So let us write down that magnetic dipole moment. So magnetic dipole moment, here we are going to represent this magnetic dipole moment with mu L. Okay, there is a new notation for magnetic dipole moment. Till now we were representing it as M, but now we are going to represent it here specifically, okay, as mu L. Okay, so magnetic dipole moment, what is the formula? Current into the area vector. Correct? Current into the area gives us magnetic dipole moment. So now let us substitute for current. We will get EV upon 2 pi r, and area over here, since it is a circle, is going to be pi r square. This is going to be pi r square. So after cancellation, r and r will get cancelled. So what you will get is E into V into r. One r will remain, pi will also get cancelled, divided by 2. This is going to be your magnetic dipole moment over here. Okay. So what I will do is, I will take this E into V into r upon 2 and just multiply and divide it by the mass of the electron. Just multiply and divide, because I want gyromagnetic ratio over here. That is why I am doing this. Okay. So I will just divide and multiply over here by m. Okay. So I will just isolate the terms, I will separate the terms, I will put this as E upon 2m. Okay. And on top I will make it as m into V into r. So now we know that m into V is nothing but a momentum, the linear momentum. But if you do m into V into r, we get something called as angular momentum. Correct, no? Which is represented by L. If you remember your 11th standard, m into V is the linear momentum, that is P. But m into V into r, that is linear momentum multiplied by the radius, is going to give you the angular momentum. So that's what I am going to substitute over here. So mu into L is going to be E upon 2m into the angular momentum, that is L. So now angular dipole moment is a vector quantity. Angular momentum is also a vector quantity, and we know whenever we replace the equation with a vector quantity, the charge should always be replaced with its sign. So we have considered an electron over here, that is why I will put it as minus E. So what this minus sign is going to tell you? This minus sign is going to tell you that if the magnetic dipole moment is pointing upwards, perpendicular to the coil upwards, then your angular momentum is going to point opposite to the dipole moment. That is, angular momentum is going to point downwards. So both are going to be in the opposite direction. If mu L is going upwards, perpendicular upwards, then L is going to point perpendicular downwards. If it was a positive charge, if a proton was moving, okay, then mu L and L will be in the same direction. If there was a proton moving, but that is not possible because proton doesn't orbit, correct, no? But if supposing a positive charge is going around, not in an atom, but in general case, if a positive charge is going around, okay, in a circular path, in a loop, let's consider, okay, in this direction, that is current is flowing in this direction, then what will happen? In that case, this will be positive and your mu L and L are going to be in the same direction. Okay, so now in vector form I can write this. This is the vector form. Okay, so now if I take this mu L upon L, if I take this L down, so I take mu L upon L, which is equal to E upon 2m in the scalar form. Okay, the value of this will come as 8.8 into 10 raised to 10. E is constant, m, that is mass of electron, is also constant, so just substitute these values, we will get it as 8.8 into 10 raised to 10 coulomb per kg, because it is electron upon mass. Okay, okay, so this is called, so this ratio, that is mu L upon L, okay, this ratio is called as the gyromagnetic ratio. This particular ratio is called as the gyromagnetic ratio. So what is the formula for gyromagnetic ratio? it is going to be E upon 2 multiplied by m, where E is the charge on an electron and m is the mass of the electron. Okay, so let's move on to the last part of the chapter now, that is moving coil galvanometer. Okay, so now everyone of us is aware what is a galvanometer because we have used it in the Wheatstone bridge, right? We used it in the Wheatstone bridge, and then we used it for the meter bridge, we used it in the potentiometer. Okay, in chapter 3 we saw what is a galvanometer. So we are aware that galvanometer is basically a current detecting device. It is a device which detects the current in the circuit, if the current exists in the circuit or not. Okay, the further use of this galvanometer, it can be used as an ammeter also, it can be used as a voltmeter also, and we are going to learn how it is converted into an ammeter and a voltmeter. That means a galvanometer can be used to measure current, heavy current also, or a galvanometer can be used to measure voltage also, potential difference also across two terminals. Okay, but there are some modifications done to this galvanometer, but it can be used. Okay, so for now we need to understand this galvanometer is basically used to detect the current in a circuit. Okay, so now this galvanometer works on the same principle which we just now discussed. Okay, that is the moving coil we call it as a moving coil galvanometer, right? So the concept of coil placed in a uniform magnetic field will be applied over here. There will be a coil, the coil will be placed in a uniform magnetic field, a torque will be acting on the coil, and the coil will start rotating. Okay, the coil will be attached with a pointer which you can see, okay, which you can see on the galvanometer reading scale. So that pointer is going to move with the coil. Okay, so this is the basic thing, a basic idea about a moving coil galvanometer. So now we are going to look at the principle, the construction of the galvanometer, and then we will find out the expression, okay, for the current which is flowing through the galvanometer, or the current which can be sensed from the galvanometer. Okay, so now as I told you, galvanometer is a device to detect the current in the circuit. Now let us come to the principle of the galvanometer. Principle. So principle of galvanometer is that the current carrying coil is placed in the magnetic field, as I told you, which is going to experience a torque, okay, and which is going to turn the or rotate the coil in this magnetic field. It is going to produce an angular deflection. It is going to rotate this coil in the uniform magnetic field. This is basically the principle of the moving coil galvanometer. Okay, coming to the construction part of a galvanometer. So basically galvanometer consists of two magnets. Okay, if you open up the galvanometer, you will see that there are two stationary magnets there, but the stationary magnet speciality is that these magnets have curved surfaces. In the previous derivation, we saw that there was a coil placed, and the magnets which were placed used to produce the magnetic field were having the plane surfaces. But here you will notice that the magnets which are used, okay, are going to have the curved surfaces. So there is a reason behind this. That reason we are going to discuss shortly. So these are going to be curved surfaces of the magnet. Okay, so this is going to be, let's say this is going to be the north pole, and this is going to be the south pole. Okay, so now what is done over here is, see why these curved surfaces are given, because in this case we want our magnetic field to be concentrated. Okay, I want all my magnetic field to be concentrated at one point, something like this. Okay, I want my magnetic field like this. That is why I am putting this as curve. Supposing it was straight, what would happen? The magnetic field line would go. This is not the major reason why we are putting the magnets like this, the curved surfaces of the magnet. The main reason is something else. Okay, but again, I want my magnetic field to be concentrated. That is why I am putting the magnets with the curved surface area like this. Okay, on both the ends. What is done next? What is done next is a magnetic core. Okay, a non-magnetic substance core is placed in between this magnetic field. So it might be a cylindrical core. Okay, like a cylinder. Okay, cylindrical body is placed. Okay, this is a soft iron core. Okay, the core which is placed is a soft iron core. So now, why this soft iron core is placed? Okay, so this basically a core is placed, and on this a wire will be wound. So basically, supposing this is the core. Okay, now I have drawn the top view. This, what you can see is this, the top view. Okay, I have placed it like this. So basically my cylinder is like this behind, inside the screen. Okay, so now if I place this like this, okay, the wire will be wound something like this. The wire will be wound something like this. So it is going to be wound like this. It will go behind. It will come like this. It will be wound like this. It will go behind. It will be wound like this, like this. So basically you will be holding that cylinder and you will be winding the wire something like this. So from top how the wires will look like? The wires will look something like this, like parallel lines. I hope you are understanding this. So basically this is how the wire will be wound on this particular cylinder. Okay, so now this cylinder which is used, the core, it is called as the core of the winding. Okay, the core which is used the soft iron core. Okay, the material which is used for this core is a soft iron. Okay, now why this soft iron is used over here? Why specifically soft iron? Why not some other material? Because soft iron is a ferromagnetic substance. Because soft iron is a ferromagnetic substance. Now what is ferromagnetic substance? This you are going to learn again in the 5th chapter in detail. Different types of materials. There are diamagnetic materials. There is something called as diamagnetic material. There is something called as paramagnetic material. This part is removed now from your portion, but still we will discuss it. Okay, there is something called as diamagnetic material, a paramagnetic material, and a ferromagnetic material. Okay, this part is removed from the fifth chapter. This is the last part of fifth chapter. Okay, so what exactly is diamagnetic? Supposing you place this diamagnetic material in a uniform magnetic field, this material is going to repel the magnetic field. It will not, magnetic field will not pass through this material. Magnetic field will be repelled like this from this material. The magnetic field will try to go away from this material. This is diamagnetic. Paramagnetic is going to allow the magnetic field to pass through it, but not to that extent. Okay, and in case of ferromagnetic will completely allow. So basically ferromagnetic, what will do, ferromagnetic material will allow the side magnetic field also to pass through it, like this, it will allow this magnetic field which was going from outside, that also will be concentrated inside. This is ferromagnetic. That means the ferromagnetic materials allow the magnetic field to pass through them. Okay, they will be concentrated with the magnetic field. Okay, so basically such materials are called as ferromagnetic material. Now what is the advantage? Now supposing the magnetic field is coming from here, what this soft iron is going to do? This soft iron is going to attract all the magnetic field around it in its direction, like this, and it will pass out like this, like this. So all the magnetic field will be concentrated through this magnetic core. But what is the use of concentrating? To basically enhance the strength of magnetic field. This is done to increase the strength of magnetic field. Okay, so basically if this core is used, the soft iron core is used over here, it is going to increase the strength of magnetic field inside the core. So basically the core is going to produce a very strong magnetic field. That is the intention of putting this soft iron core here. Okay, so now this is the permanent magnet which is placed. Okay, which is producing a radial magnetic field. So this magnetic field which is produced is radial magnetic field. There is a soft iron core on which the wire is bound, as can be seen from here. Okay, so basically this coil, there will be a current passing through this coil. Okay, and on top over here there will be a spring attached to this coil. There will be a spring attached. Okay, and this is going to be connected to the pointer. Okay, this coil is going to be connected to the pointer, and then you are going to have a meter scale over here, a reading scale over here, on which you can take the readings. Okay, so basically what is going to happen is, as the current flows through this coil, there will be torque acting on the coil, because this will become a current carrying coil, and current carrying coil which is placed in a uniform magnetic field is going to experience a force, a torque, and the torque will tend to rotate this coil. And as this coil rotates, this coil is going to rotate on this core. It will be freely bound. Okay, so it is going to rotate in this coil. Okay, so basically what is going to happen is, this coil is going to rotate, and along with the coil this pointer is going to rotate. Okay, and that is going to give us the reading. Okay, so now there is this cylindrical soft iron core which increases the magnetic field strength and also makes the field radial. Okay, so basically since this is also curved, this magnetic field which is coming from this curved magnets is again going to be radial. Okay, so now when current I is going to flow, when current I is going to flow through the coil, it is going to experience a magnetic torque. Okay, it is going to experience a magnetic torque. Let's say that magnetic torque is Tm. Okay, and we just now saw the expression for this torque. What is the expression for the torque given as? NIAB sine of theta. This is the expression for the torque we have already studied. So the magnetic field over here, okay, is taken radial. The main reason for the magnetic field to be taken as radial is that this angle theta should always be 90 degrees. This angle theta should always be 90 degrees. This is why this radial magnetic field is being taken over here. Okay. Okay, so the main intention of putting this radial magnetic field, that is by providing these surfaces as curved surfaces and also the core, okay, so that it makes it radial, okay, is that at every point this theta should be equal to 90 degrees. Now how this theta is going to be 90 degrees? See, this is the coil, so perpendicular to the coil, that is the magnetic dipole moment vector, is going to be like this. That is, let's take, it will be same as the pointer direction. It will be same as the pointer direction. That is, the area vector or the magnetic dipole moment vector is going to be perpendicular to this coil. Okay, and if you look at this field over here, this field right now, or this field right now, okay, it should have been like this field like that right now. So this is going to be 90 degrees to this M. So that time theta will be equal to 90 degrees, because M and B should be perpendicular. Now supposing the coil becomes like this, okay, that time your M is going to be like this, okay, and at the same time M is like this. This magnetic field over here is going to be 90 degrees. So every time this coil moves, okay, at each and every point, every time the coil moves, at each and every point, your magnetic dipole moment, that is the pointer direction, okay, is going to be always perpendicular to the magnetic field vector. Always. Okay, at every single point it is going to be perpendicular to the magnetic field. However it moves, however it rotates, at every single point the magnetic dipole moment is going to be perpendicular to the magnetic field vector. Okay, so moving on, sine of theta is sine of 90, that will be equal to, that is going to be equal to 1. Okay, so what you will get over here is that this is going to be equal to NIA into B. So torque is going to be NIA multiplied by B. Okay, so now as I told you, here a spring is provided, correct? No, there is a spring which is provided over here. So what is this spring? Okay, supposing you have a fixed wall, okay, and there is a spring attached to this wall, and then you put a pressure or you put a force on this wall. Okay, Newton's third law. Once you put a force on particular body, there is equal and opposite force that is coming on your supposing there is a force, if you are pressing this coil, if you are pressing this spring, okay, against the wall, there will be a same force that is equal and opposite force you will be feeling on your palm, correct? No, that is for every action there is equal and opposite reaction, correct? No, supposing you are pressing this coil with a force of 5 Newton, there will be equal and opposite force, that is minus 5 Newton, which you can feel on your palm, correct? No, so this spring is provided for the same reason. Okay, so if you are applying a torque, this magnetic field is applying a torque on this coil, and this torque is rotating this coil, there will be a counter torque, there will be a restoring torque which will be applied by this spring, okay, on the coil. So if the coil is trying to move in particular direction, there will be a constant torque that is called as the restoring torque that will be acting on this particular coil, which will be always in the opposite direction. So if you remember, in 11th standard we had studied that spring force is directly proportional to the displacement. How much force you are putting is directly proportional to the displacement, that much displacement will happen. So we replace it with a constant, that is spring constant. If you remember, F is equal to Kx is a very famous expression or a very important expression which we studied in 11th standard. Okay, so using this, okay, we can also say, in this case we can also say that force will be replaced by torque, because this is for linear, correct? No, we have rotational. Okay, so force will be replaced by torque, spring constant will remain as it is, and the linear displacement will be replaced by the angular displacement. That's the only difference. Even this expression we have learnt in 11th standard. So this is going to be your counter torque or the restoring torque, okay, which spring is going to apply. Okay, so this restoring torque, okay, let us write it down. So restoring torque, let's call it as tau r. Okay, so this restoring torque over here is going to be the spring constant, okay, multiply, or it is also called as the torsional constant. If you remember, torsional constant we call it for the spring, which is constant for a spring, correct? So K is going to be torsional constant times the angular displacement. More the torque, more will be the angular displacement. So this is going to be your restoring torque. Okay, so as we know that the main torque which was applied by the magnetic field will be equal to this restoring torque, so you can equate both of them. So tau m will be equal to the restoring torque, that is torque due to the magnetic field, will be equal to the torque which is restoring torque. Okay, so just equate two of them, so you will get NIAB will be equal to K multiplied by phi. Okay, so what you will get from here, you will get I will be equal to K upon NAB multiplied by phi. Okay, so you will notice that I will be equal to the torsional constant divided by number of turns multiplied by the area of the coil multiplied by the magnetic field times the deflection, whatever deflection you are getting, the angular deflection or angular displacement. Okay, so you will notice that K is a constant, N is also a constant, A is a constant, and B is also a constant here. So this bracketed term, the term which I have put in the bracket, becomes a constant. So I can say is directly proportional to phi. Okay, that means more the current flowing in the circuit, more will be the deflection shown by the galvanometer. I is proportional to phi. It means more the current flowing in the circuit, more will be the deflection shown by that galvanometer. Okay, and this K upon n into A into B is a constant which is known as the galvanometer constant. So I can say phi is equal to NAB upon K into I. Okay, and this NAB upon K, this is called as the galvanometer. This is called as the galvanometer constant. Okay, so or rather we will put it this way because this sounds wrong. Okay, so we can say that from here this is a constant, so phi is proportional to I. Okay, phi will be proportional to I. So we can say that the deflection is directly proportional to the current flowing through the galvanometer, and hence that is why it has a linear scale, because the amount of current is increased, the deflection will be increased. The current is decreased, the deflection will be decreased. Okay, that is why we put a linear scale over there. Okay, so this is about the construction and the formula for the current, okay, in a moving coil galvanometer. So in the next class we are going to see something called as current sensitivity, voltage sensitivity. Okay, then we will learn how to convert our galvanometer into an ammeter, how to convert a galvanometer into a voltmeter. Okay, we do not have the derivation, that is also removed. Okay, for this year we will just have the expression for the problems, so that we will cover in the next class, and we'll finish the theory part of this chapter in the next class. Okay, so we'll stop here for today.